part of the truth is the specifics, but part of the truth is also just the darkness and evil that it just exists in humanity and in men in particular.
I am very excited to be speaking with Robert Budreau, the director of Queen of Bones. Robert, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. The Queen of Bones is so much fun. I really thought it was strong and it was powerful. I had a lot of fun. Where did it come from?
Well, it was the first script that I've directed that I didn't write, and it was a script by a guy named Michael Bergner from Portland, Oregon, that kind of came to me through an agent, and it was something that it was kind of a genre in a world I hadn't explored before, so I was kind of really turned on by it.
Well, I really love the vibe of the film. The performances, of course, are great. But I wanted to ask you about the look of it because there is this sort of interesting feel to this film. It's kind of almost warm in tone, and I was wondering why was it that you decided to depict the world in this way?
Well, I think, the film has both kind of folk horror, supernatural thriller elements, but also these kind of Steinbeckian 1930s drama elements. And so for me, it was like melding these different looks and aesthetics. And because it's a film about these kids that are effectively claustrophobically captured in a way by their father in the remote woods and kept under his thumb. To me, like that was the reason that we just decided to shoot it in 4:3, which gives vertical spacing and kind of a claustrophobic feel and kind of like a very austere formal quality, which I think works with the religious kind of undertones. And I had found that quite a few of the folk horrors over time had kind of used a more vertical format for framing, which kind of creates a more subtle sense of dread. But at the same time, I didn't want to kind of go with some of the classic horror tropes of it just always being dark and underlit and there's a bit of that, but to me like the biggest demons are just in everyday life. And some of my favorite, even Hitchcock films like Shadow of a Doubt and stuff, are all done in like bright daylight. Not that this is full of bright daylight, but and so yeah, those were some of the reasons I think we ended up on this kind of aesthetic.
Yeah, it is interesting because the film is constantly talking about darkness, yet there's very little real darkness in the film. Like literal darkness. The
Right.
darkness is much more metaphorical. It's almost a neo-pastoral vibe, and I love that aspect of it. It just it you get the sense of the darkness is underneath as opposed to anything that we're seeing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about this because it is an interesting film where you've got this, like you said, these religious figures and this young woman who is just coming into adulthood, and there's this really interesting conversation going around about the strength of women in these oppressive worlds. And I wanted to ask you, I know you didn't write the script, but what is it that interested you most about getting that part of the story and bringing it to the forefront?
Well, I am the father to a daughter who's now 12. I mean, I think she was 9 or 10 when we shot this film several years ago. But I think being a father and I have a son as well kind of opened up my mind to the idea of doing a film in general that had that are the leads are kids, and it's ultimately a bit of a folk tale about kids finding like a spell book at its most basic form. There's an archetypal folk tale quality to it that kind of appealed to me, I think, as a father. And I do think it had something to say with the lead being a female who was kind of trying to break out of this patriarchal world
Mm.
in the 30s, and you've got the other older female figure kind of advising at the time. But that was kind of just exciting to me because it gave it a certain contemporary relevance, even though it's period. And I've done a lot of period films, and it's always a question that I ask myself and other people ask me is like, why now? Why tell these old stories? Like they have to have some kind of relevance other than just being entertainment. And so, yes, that was an important factor for me.
As a father, what was it like working with these kids? Because the kids do a great job. Like they're sometimes kid actors can really struggle, but they do a wonderful job in this film. What were those conversations like? Because, I know that they're not children, they're not young. But these are some pretty mature themes that they're wrestling with along the way. I was wondering what those conversations were like.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of conversations with both of them in advance, especially Julia, and because I cast them both pretty early in the process, so that it all came together fairly fast. But I also, just had to trust that I did great casting because Jacob's super experienced, and as is Julia, and Julia is just they were so mature. Their craft is so strong. We didn't have a lot of time, period. But then, the kids' days, because they have to be tutored and whatnot, have very short work days. So I was operating on almost like a half work day compared to what I'm used to working with adults on. And so I was very fortunate that they were so strong and got it because there wasn't a lot of time. And so much of it is casting, especially with kids, because there's less time to talk and really evolve performance on something like this, and they were just able to bring it.
They really do. They really do. You know, you really feel the emotion through these young ones or younger performers are just excellent. I wanted to ask you too about this film because or about the idea of the hidden truth. Um, these characters, these young ones are looking for the hidden truth in a world that is fighting the darkness. And I think that's really an interesting tension for a film like this. And I was wondering in your mind, if you were stating what the hidden truth was, what would it be to you? The thing that we don't know that we need to know.
Well, on one level, the specifics in this film are clearly a certain secret that the father is holding about the mother, but that's
Yes.
just kind of the specifics. But I think on a more macro level, you know, I think all parents, like I think even in this case, the Martin Freeman character is doing what he's doing out of love and protection. It might be warped and it might be the wrong choice, but parents are trying to protect their kids from the realities and the harshness of the world, and knowing that as a parent myself, and these kids are kind of at the point of coming in age. It's a very fragile time where they are gonna, like, she has to become a woman and he's gonna become a man, the usual kind of metaphors. And it's true. And in a very short time, they learn a lot of things, and there's a lot, there's elements of the real world that shadow them. And I do think, like, part of the truth is the specifics, but part of the truth is also just the darkness and evil that it just exists in humanity and in men in particular, that they have to come to terms with. Never mind witches and supernatural stuff. I mean, that's always fun and stuff, but in a lot of ways, the evils and the darkness is just in humanity, and that's hard for kids, I think, to understand. And so there's a truth that's kind of protected, for better or worse. But then, yeah, as we know in this world, there's all kinds of fake truth, and it can be warped for people's own needs and stuff. And so yeah, there's a lot of layers in that. Like, I feel like every film to a certain degree is about characters trying to find some truth about themselves or the world, and it's just different here because we've got 12-year-old twins in an isolated situation, so it takes on a particular meaning.
Well, absolutely. Like, I mean, it's very specific to the film, but at the same time, there's something about it that still feels larger in this case
Good.
at the same
Yeah.
time, which I appreciate. And I think Martin does a wonderful job as well because he's so reprehensible, but he's not a reprehensible being. And or he is, but he is, there's this, like you said, he's doing it out of trying to protect his kids, but he's so afraid, and there's this deep-seated fear. And I was wondering about that. What was it about Martin that you thought would be right for this particular role?
Well, I mean, I'm just a huge fan of his. of his as an actor. Like I absolutely loved him in Fargo and a bunch of other things. But I also thought that he presents as quite a nice, friendly everyman, and which is perfect because then you're kind of to a certain degree casting against type, but he also has a certain kind of formal quality about the way he speaks and the way he presents, which I thought would work good for period. And when I met him and worked together, he was everything I hoped. He was very collaborative and he brought that element of a bit of surprise. And so yeah, it worked really well.
Yeah, he does a great job. Like I said, the film is a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed the tension that was going on between light and dark in this world. I was just wondering, though, as we start to wrap, what is it that you hope audiences take away from their time with the Queen of Bones?
Well, I mean, I think hopefully they get a bit of a window into this kind of unique world of the 1930s and what that was like. I hope that they're entertained and they have some fun. It's not like a hardcore horror where they're going to be scared out of their pants, but hopefully there's some fun thrills. And it's just another window into some timeless themes and a chance to kind of revisit like folk tales, which to me are so archetypal and primitive that we've all known since childhood in a kind of a different way.
Oh, I appreciate that. Honestly, I really do. Robert, it's a pleasure to speak with you. I really do appreciate it. Queen of Bones is on VOD. Am I saying on VOD on September 30th? Is that
Go
right?
on, yeah, digital, various digital.
Digital and on demand. Yes, absolutely. Robert, thanks so much. Have a great day.
And thanks.
Thank you.